All right, we're working on a front clip on this YXZ. This one we're going to replace the whole cross tube. We usually always do the cross tube when we do it here. So if you're not going to replace that cross tube, you would cut it right here. And we usually cut it just right in the middle here and then on the bottom right here. So there's 6 cuts there. We're going to replace the cross tube, so we're going to cut it off on both sides right here, and then we'll cut this gusset off and clean it up. And then on the bottom, the same thing, we're going to cut it here and cut that gusset off and clean it up. So we'll get that cut off, and then I'll show you guys kind of how we put it on there and line it up and stuff. This one does have some aftermarket gusset tubes. Those help for sure, but it seems like it bent right in front of those. All right, front clip is off. We cut the 2 top points there, and then on the bottom we just cut here. So just kind of rough at first. Next we're going to go through, you can see we've marked where the tube is. So if you were to continue this tube, we did 2 marks right here, and it just kind of shows you where the new tube's going to go. So that's going to help us mark the new tube. Next we're going to take and we're going to cut this gusset right here, right on the inside of the weld. We're going to cut right here, kind of up to the tube. Once we cut it like here and on the sides, we're going to like bend it up and then kind of cut a little bit on the back side, and we can basically just rip that gusset off. Once that's off, then we're going to cut the tube itself. We'll cut the weld without getting into this tube. It's real important. So you want to leave a little bit, and then when we're all done, we'll just grind it flat, and then we'll start mounting the new tube. So do that on these. Also do that on the bottom ones. And then it'll be just tubes there, and we'll just start from there. All right, so we got the gusset cut off there. You can see we cut around the inside of the weld and left the weld. So now we'll go back and use like a flapper wheel, and we'll just clean up the weld, make it real flush. And you can see the 2 lines right here where the tube used to be. So make sure you mark those before you cut the tube out. Okay, gussets are off and we got it all cleaned up. Be careful not to grind into the tube itself. So still got the marks here. It's all ready to go. Next, we'll start trimming the cross tube. So these are both clean, and then down here. Try to take your time and get it really good. It'll help you when you go back together with it. So we have the welds all cleaned off. Our next step will be basically mocking up the front clip. And it's pretty basic. So how we do it here is we use these 2 holes that are factory holes, and they're a little bit rough on the outside. So you'll want to measure from like inside to inside, and you'll want to get a center mark. And then we do the same thing on our clip. We measure outside to outside and get a center mark on the clip. And then up here, same thing. We do a center mark here too. So I have a center mark at the bottom, I have a center mark at the top, and then I have a center mark on the chassis. One of the first things when you're going to put the clip on is the brake lines. If you kept it all together like we did here, you want to make sure and feed them through. So they're going to feed through right here. We usually just set them on here. And then the steering shaft, leave that installed, and make sure we feed that through right here, because that's going to get ready to go to the new rack. So one of the first things you want to do when you get the clip just in place is line up this center line. So the 2 lines we made earlier, just make sure they're lined up. So we use a ratchet strap on the top, and then we use one on the bottom. And on the bottom one, we will put the ratchet on the bottom so it pulls it tight in there. And then the first measurement we're going to take is right here. We always kind of go off this shock brace, and you can see it's right at 12.5 to the center of the back of that shock brace, and we're measuring to the front of the tube right there. So we're at 12.5 right there. That'll be the first measurement we take. Okay, our second measurement is going to be holding a straight edge along the bottom of the frame, and you want it to be parallel to the front clip. So you can see right there, it's pretty straight. So the third measurement we're going to get is from the chassis right here, right into that cross tube. You can just stick the tape measure up in there, and we go right to this tab right here, and we're right at 35 inches. So this tab right here, right to the tape measure. Now let's go to the other side, measure it. We're about 34 and 13/16. So we're about 3/16 short on this side. So now what we're gonna do is tack the bottom on this side. We're gonna put a tack, and then we'll bring the clip towards the driver's side a little bit and gap that back right rear to where it's lined up equal on both sides. Now when you go to tack this, make sure it's straight with the frame. So if you have an angle finder and you want to put it on the front clip and on the frame, or you can just eyeball it. Just make sure that the copes and these tubes are straight side to side with the frame. In other words, it's not twisted side to side like that. All right, so we got a tack weld right here on the driver's side, and then we pulled it over with this strap. We didn't pull up with it, we just pulled it over. And then we ended up on this one. Dustin said this is one of the most important measurements he does, but he got 34 7/8. So upper tab on the front of it, now we're equal on both sides, 34 7/8. We have a little bit of a gap on the passenger side, so we'll fill that gap when we weld that. And we know now that it's centered side to side. Okay, here's our right rear tube. We got it tacked in place, a little bit of a gap. And just remember, just tack everything at first. Wait to weld until you're all done and everything's assembled, then you can weld everything. Okay, next we're gonna mark the center of this cross tube. We're just gonna measure from the end, center right here. It's about 29.5, it looks like. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Give us a little X there. Okay, now we have a center line of the cross tube. Next, we would find the center line of the bends of the tube. So it's an 1 3/4 inch tube. So we're gonna take 7/8 of an inch and we're gonna make a mark on the tube right there at 7/8 with it flat on the ground. Okay, next we'll set the cross tube in place. We'll line up our center line we just made with the center line we did on the front clip. And you can see out here, it's pretty close. So we just gotta do a little bit of notching. You can also see where the tube marks were originally, so we want to kind of line those up too. All right, so this notch here, we've kind of got it dialed in here. We use a hole saw notch here, and we notch it at 18 degrees. So it's an 1 3/4 notch. It's going to be 18 degrees in, right to the tip of the tube on the top. And then if you look at your rotation that we marked on the tube, you want to move it a 1/4 inch up of rotation. So if that was on your mark, you'd move it a 1/4 inch and it'd be 18 degrees and it would go right to here. So if you do the same on both sides, that should get you really close on the notch. All right, we got the cross tube in there. We got it lined up. We did do the coping. So we did this one at a 1/4 inch rotation and we did 18 degrees. And you can see our rotation probably could have gone a little bit more. Probably could have gone about a 1/2 inch rotation. And we probably could have done 17 degrees. So the last vehicle we did, this one would fit perfect, but this one it fits a little bit different. So I would say, you know, if you want to meet in the middle, but a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch rotation and then 18 to 17 degrees I think would be good. Okay, once you have it notched and lined up, we just put a couple tacks here. So we tacked it here and then we tacked it in the center on both sides. All right, so there's 2 more alignments we checked before we weld and tack everything. This one's all welded because it was damaged and it was bent back pretty far. So this one we went off our alignment specs that we did in the video. And then this bolt right here was pretty far off. So this is the U-joint for the steering rack. And what you want to do is you want to go up to the steering column and you want to loosen this housing. So there's 2 bolts here and 2 bolts on the other side to where you have play in there. Once that's loose, then you can slide it down and line up this bolt, and you want there to be no pressure on this bolt. You want it to go right in, and then once everything's done and welded and tight, then last you're gonna go up and tighten those 4 bolts up top. So that's the first, and the second is the front differential. Go ahead and mock it up and put all the bolts in there loosely. And then the drive line, you wanna just make sure it has a little bit of play back and forth. You wanna make sure it's not like too short and binding and stuff, so. Those are your 2 adjustments you wanna check. All right, we made some gusset tubes here. These are the new cross ones that we'll weld in. These are pretty easy. This is 1 1/4 inch tubing, and we cut it 10 inches long. And we'll use a 1 3/4 inch notcher on the top, and that'll be 46 degree notch. And we'll use an 1 1/4 inch notch on the bottom, and that'll be a 27 degree notch. As far as the top gussets, we made these little 1 3/4 inch tube notches gussets, and they pretty much just sit in like this. You can do like plate, or you can make something like this, whatever you want to do there. This is something we just kind of made here, and they work really well. Okay, so we got the gusset tubes in. Here's the first ones we notched. Those are in. If you line the notches up, they line up pretty good with that cross tube down there, right down there. And the angle is probably not such a big deal. They don't have anything like fixtured off of them or anything. So get those in place, and then here's our gussets here. He's already started welding on these. Those turn out really good. So any kind of tie-in you can do here, you know, whether it's a gusset that comes up, just make sure it doesn't stick out of the fender right there. So that's why we do them on the bottom side. And then at this point, go ahead and start welding. Everything we've done so far to this point, you can go ahead and weld it up. And then we'll just have to do some tabs and some fender tabs, and we'll be done.